All right, so let's dive right in, shall
Yeah.
we? We're talking about a story that sounds like something straight out of, a spy movie.
Oh, this is a good one.
It is. Picatinny Arsenal in New Jersey.
Yeah.
Now, for folks who might not be familiar, this is like the Army's top secret research and manufacturing hub
Uh-huh.
for weapons.
Yeah.
And recently, there's been a string of mysterious drone sightings.
Yeah. And that's really got everyone on edge. Like any unauthorized activity around a place like Picatinny, that's going to raise some eyebrows.
Yeah,
But we're not talking about, just some drone enthusiast who wandered a little too close.
right. Exactly. And it wasn't just one or two sightings either. We're talking 11 confirmed drone incursions
Wow.
in just a few weeks. Most of them were clustered around Thanksgiving. So,
Yeah.
that's not just some random, occurrence.
Yeah.
And it's got everyone asking, what's the motive?
That's a great question. And that's where it gets really interesting. See, we're not talking about grainy footage from someone's, cell phone video. When they say confirmed, that means actual military personnel. They saw these things
Right.
with their own eyes.
I was reading a statement from Lieutenant Colonel Craig A. Bonham II.
Okay.
He's the garrison commander at Picatinny.
Right.
And he basically said they're baffled. I mean, he's quoted as saying, the source and cause of these aircraft operating in our area remain unknown,
Yeah.
which just adds to the intrigue. Right?
Oh, absolutely. And what's really fascinating to me is that this isn't just a Picatinny problem. There's been a whole wave of these, they're calling them mystery drone sightings
Oh, yeah.
across New Jersey.
Yeah, all over the place.
Even Governor Murphy himself, he's reported seeing some. But here's the thing. Not every sighting actually turned out to be a drone.
Right. There was that one Sunday where there were, like, I think it was 49
Oh, wow.
reported sightings. But later they figured out some of them were just airplanes, just misidentified airplanes.
Yeah, I guess it can be hard to tell, especially at night.
Yeah.
You've got, what? The distance, darkness, maybe some weather conditions affecting, how well you can see.
Yeah.
Plus, you got to think about the human factor. Our brains try to make sense of what we see.
Right, right.
So it's really easy to jump to conclusions.
Yeah, makes sense.
Blinking light in the distance. Must be a drone.
Right. And the authorities, of course, they aren't taking any chances. The FAA stepped in and they put flight restrictions, not just over Picatinny,
Ooh.
but also over, wait for it, Trump National Golf Club.
Wow. Talk about being caught in the crossfire.
Right.
That's wild. And that really kind of highlights the legal side of things,
Yeah.
Unauthorized drone flights over restricted airspace, especially around sensitive areas like military bases. I mean, you can get hit with some serious penalties for that.
Yeah, for sure.
So it shows you they're not messing around. This is serious business.
Okay, so let's talk about the elephant in the room here. What kind of threat could these drones actually pose to a place like Picatinny? I mean, realistically.
Well, that depends. It depends on, what kind of drone we're talking about, what its capabilities are, and of course, the intent of whoever's operating it.
Right.
Because, I mean, drones today, they can be equipped with all sorts of tech, like, high-resolution cameras. Obviously, for surveillance, you could have jamming equipment, to disrupt communications. They could even carry small payloads.
Okay, now that's getting a little unsettling. We're talking about, like, sabotage,
Yeah.
espionage.
I mean, we can't rule anything out at this point. The FBI is involved now, and that tells you something right there. They're not treating this lightly. But even if, let's say, these turn out to be harmless hobbyists, just pushing the limits, this whole situation exposes a real vulnerability.
Wait.
Well, think about it. This is Picatinny. This is where they develop and test cutting-edge weapon systems.
So even just visually, someone could gather some serious intelligence. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
And this isn't just a U.S. problem either. Militaries around the world, they're all facing this new reality. Drones have changed the game when it comes to security.
So what are other military bases in New Jersey doing about this? I know the articles mention a couple others like Naval Weapons Station Earl
Yeah.
and Joint Base McGuire-Dix Lakehurst. Are they seeing similar activity?
Well, both of those bases, they've put out statements, saying they're monitoring the situation and that they're more aware of, potential drone activity. But so far, neither base has reported anything on the scale of what's been happening at Picatinny.
It makes you wonder why Picatinny seems to be like the main target here. Is it just because it's such a, high value target in terms of the research and development? That's a really good question. And you can bet the investigators, they're trying to figure that out. But the fact that it is happening, and this frequently. It's a wake-up call. This isn't, sci-fi anymore. This is happening now, and we need to be ready to deal with it.
Yeah, it's almost like we're in this like new era of aerial threats. But instead of fighter jets, we're talking about something you can buy at like Target.
Right. It's like the democratization of airspace, for better or worse. And it raises a whole bunch of new questions about, how we balance individual freedom with national security.
Speaking of questions, I'm really curious about the motives. Like, are we talking about, just some curious hobbyists? Or is this a coordinated effort? Like, are they trying to get intel? Or is it something else entirely?
That is the million-dollar question, isn't it? And to answer it, we need to look beyond just the technology. We need to think about the human element, the who, and the why.
So let's dig into that. What are some of the possible explanations? I mean, why would someone be flying drones over Picatinny Arsenal, of all places?
Okay, so we've touched on the hobbyist possibility.
Right.
People who maybe they don't even realize how serious it is, flying near a military base.
Yeah.
Maybe they're just, I don't know, maybe they just got a new drone, they're excited, they're pushing the limits, seeing what it can do, testing its range, trying to get some, cool footage for their YouTube channel.
Sure. Yeah.
But then there's the other side of the coin, the possibility of, something more malicious. Like, what about corporate espionage?
Oh, yeah.
Trying to sneak a peek at the competition's latest tech.
Right.
Or what about foreign governments, trying to steal military secrets?
It's like a real-life spy thriller happening right here in Jersey.
Meh.
And what's scary is it's not just a one-time thing. This seems like it's part of a bigger trend.
That's exactly what makes it so important to understand. It's not just what happened to Picatinny. It's what it tells us about this growing threat of drones and how we need to change, our security measures to keep up.
So let's talk about those security measures then. What can actually be done to prevent these kinds of incursions from happening in the first place?
Well, that's a tough one. It's a real balancing act, between individual freedom and national security.
Right.
We can't just ban drones altogether. I mean, they have tons of legitimate uses, all sorts of fields.
Right.
So what's the solution? Well, it's going to require a multi-pronged approach.
Okay.
First, you've got to have clear rules about drone use, enforceable regulations, especially around sensitive areas like, military installations. And those rules, they need to evolve as the technology changes.
That makes sense. But rules aren't enough, are they? I mean, you need a way to actually enforce them.
Exactly. So we're talking about investing in, really strong detection systems. Think advanced radar that can differentiate between a drone and, a bird, and countermeasures that can take care of a threat without, causing a lot of collateral damage.
So things like, what? Jamming signals, taking control of the drone remotely, or, I don't know, laser beams.
Well, there's some pretty amazing counter-drone tech out there already. There are systems that use high-powered microwaves to basically disable the electronics.
Wow.
There are nets that they can launch, capture the drone in midair. There are even some places where they're using trained birds of prey.
That's crazy. It's like we're entering this whole new era of, aerial defense. But with all this focus on technology, it seems like there's another element that we can't forget.
Oh, absolutely. Public awareness. People need to understand the rules.
Right.
And their responsibilities when they're operating a drone and what could happen if they misuse them.
Because even if someone isn't trying to cause harm, a simple mistake or just not knowing something could have big consequences.
Absolutely. Imagine some hobbyists. They're just trying to get a cool picture of a sunset and they accidentally fly their drone too close to a base.
Yeah.
To them, it might seem harmless, but it triggers a security alert. And it could even disrupt important operations.
So it's not just about catching the bad guys. It's about preventing stuff from happening in the first place.
Exactly. And that requires a few things: education, clear regulations, and enforcement. It's a tricky problem, but one we can't ignore.
This whole conversation has really been eye-opening. I mean, the whole drone issue, it's so complex. It's not just fun gadgets anymore. We're talking about national security, privacy, the very nature of our airspace.
And it's evolving so fast. What we're seeing now at Picatinny, it's just a tiny glimpse of what's to come.
Yeah.
As drones become even more sophisticated and easier to get, the challenges and the opportunities, they're only going to multiply.
It's like we're making up the rules as we go along, trying to figure out how to deal with this whole new era of drones.
That's a great way to put it. We're in uncharted territory, no roadmap. But if we understand the risks, invest in the right technologies, and create a culture of responsible drone use, then we can harness this incredible potential while still mitigating the dangers.
So it sounds like we have to learn to live with drones
Yeah.
in a way that balances their capabilities with the need for security and safety.
That's it, that delicate balance. That's the key challenge of the drone age.
It's a lot to think about.
It is.
And it makes me wonder, are there any lessons we can learn from history, like from how we've dealt with other disruptive technologies?
That is a great question, and it's one that historians and technologists are actually starting to look at. Like, how did we adapt to the car, the airplane, the internet? Each of those innovations, they brought their own set of challenges and opportunities, and how we responded to them shaped the world we live in today.
So maybe by studying those past experiences, we can figure out how to approach this drone revolution to make sure it benefits everyone while minimizing the risks.
It's a valuable exercise, and it reminds us that technology, it's never neutral. It's a tool. And like any tool, it can be used for good or bad. The future of drones, it depends on the choices we make about how we use them, not just the technology itself.
It's a powerful reminder that we all have a part to play in shaping that future.
And speaking of shaping the future, one area that I find particularly interesting is how drones and AI are starting to intersect.
Ah, yes. AI is a game changer for drones. It opens up so many possibilities. Imagine drones that can fly themselves, make decisions on the fly based on the information they're gathering.
That sounds amazing, but also kind of scary. What are the implications of that, of having that level of autonomy, especially for like military applications?
Well, that's a hot topic right now. There's a lot of debate. Some people say AI-powered drones could make warfare more precise, reduce civilian casualties, and keep soldiers out of harm's way. Others are worried it could lead to a dangerous escalation, with machines making life or death decisions without any human oversight.
That's heavy stuff. Definitely something worth exploring further, but for now, I think it's safe to say the world of drones is changing incredibly fast.
It is, and what we've seen at Picatinny, as unsettling as it is just the beginning. So where do we go from here? What does the future hold for this technology that's both so promising and so potentially dangerous? Okay, so we've talked about how serious these drone things at Picatinny are and all the questions it brings up about, security and this whole drone world we're living in. But let's get back to the motive for a sec. We've thrown around some ideas, but what are investigators actually focusing on to try and, figure out who's behind these flights and what they want?
Well, think of it like a puzzle, a big puzzle, and they're trying to find all the pieces. So they're going to be looking at the flight paths of the drones, seeing if there's any patterns, or if they were targeting specific spots within the arsenal. And if they're lucky enough to find any, wreckage, that's like hitting the jackpot. That can tell them what kind of drone it was, what it could do, maybe even trace it back to where it came from, or who made it.
So it's kind of like detective work, right? Using clues to track down the culprit. But even if they figure out the how, we still don't know the why.
Yeah.
And that seems like the hardest part to figure out.
Yeah, it is. And that's where things get really interesting. We need to think outside the box. It's not always about espionage or sabotage. Just because a drone is spotted near a military base.
So you're saying there could be other reasons?
Definitely. Let's play devil's advocate here.
Okay.
What if some of these drone operators are just, I don't know, thrill seekers?
Thrill seekers.
Yeah, like they're drawn to the whole forbidden aspect of a military base, the idea of getting into restricted airspace,
Yeah.
getting some crazy footage to show off online. It's dangerous, sure, but for some people, that's part of the thrill.
Wow, I never even thought about that.
Yeah.
It was like, what, a game of capture the flag, but with really high stakes.
Exactly. And it might seem, reckless, irresponsible, but investigators can't just rule it out. And then you've also got the possibility of, someone trying to make a statement or cause some trouble. Like, what if they want to expose something that they think the government is keeping secret or doing wrong? A drone could be their way of doing that, getting images or video that they think the public needs to see.
That's a scary thought. But I can see how it could happen. It's like using a drone for whistleblowing or protest
Yeah.
in this digital age.
Right. And it adds another layer of complexity because how do you tell the difference between a real threat and someone who's, just trying to exercise their right to free speech, even if it's reckless?
Yeah, that's a tough one. It goes back to what we were talking about before, right? That balance between individual freedom and national security. It's like walking a tightrope.
It is. And as drone technology keeps getting better, that tightrope gets even narrower and more wobbly.
Speaking of technology getting better, I'm curious about the other side of this, the stuff they're developing to counter this drone threat. We mentioned some things, but can we dig a little deeper? How do these things actually work?
Sure. Let's start with detection, because that's
Yeah.
your first line of defense. Traditional radar systems, they're meant for picking up big aircraft, not little zippy drones. So we're starting to see new types of radar. They use higher frequencies and more sophisticated algorithms to pick out and track drones, even in really crowded environments.
So it's like having, what, like a super sensitive ear. That can hear a mosquito buzzing in a room full of people.
Exactly. Great analogy. But okay, so you've detected a drone, now what? That's where countermeasures come in. And there's a whole bunch of different options, each with its own, pluses and minuses.
All right, let's break it down then. What are some of the top contenders in this drone arms race?
One approach is radio frequency jamming. Basically, you flood the area with radio signals, and that disrupts the drone's communication with its operator, so it can force the drone to land or even fly back to where it came from.
So it's like you're cutting the strings on a puppet, making it go haywire.
Yep. But the thing is, jamming can be a problem because it can also mess with other electronic devices in the area. So there's a lot of research going on to make it more targeted, focusing on the specific frequencies that drones use.
What about taking control of the drone remotely? Is that even possible?
Oh, it is. It's called spoofing. Basically, you mimic the signals from the drone's controller. So you can hijack it, take over the controls, and steer it away, or land it safely.
That sounds like something out of a movie. But there must be some limits, right?
Of course. To do spoofing, you have to know the exact communication protocols the drone uses. And that can change depending on the make and model. It's like this constant back and forth. Drone makers try to make their systems more secure, and then they develop anti-spoofing tech.
So it's constant battle to stay one step ahead. What about like more physical approaches? I remember reading about those trained eagles swooping in and taking down a drone.
Yeah, that's definitely more visually appealing, and some places are trying it,
Yeah.
but there are concerns about the bird's safety and what happens if the drone crashes, especially if it's over a populated area.
Right. So maybe not the best solution all the time. What about those high-powered microwaves and lasers we were talking about?
Those are what we call directed energy weapons. They're like the cutting edge of counter-drone tech. Microwaves can disrupt electronic circuits. Basically, they fry the drone's brains, and lasers can burn or disable important parts.
Sounds super futuristic, but also kind of scary. Are they using these things yet? Or is this still sci-fi stuff?
They're working on them, testing them, and some systems are being used in limited ways, but there are still some kinks to work out, like range, accuracy, and making sure they don't cause unintended damage.
It's like we're creating this awesome tech, but we have to be really careful about how we use it.
Exactly. There's a whole ethical side to this that we can't forget. Like how much force is okay to use against a drone? What level of risk is acceptable? These are questions we have to think about as we move into this new world of aerial security.
It feels like we're at this turning point, trying to figure out how to balance this incredible technology with the real dangers it poses.
We are, and it's a conversation we have to keep having. The future of our airspace, our security, even our privacy depends on it.
It really is a lot to think about. It makes me wonder, are there things we can learn from the past? Like how we dealt with other, game-changing technologies.
That's a really good point. And some people are starting to look into that. Like what happened with the car, the airplane, the internet. All of those things brought their own set of problems and opportunities. And how we reacted to them, well, it shaped the world we live in now.
So maybe by studying those past experiences, we can get some ideas about how to handle this drone revolution to make sure it's a good thing for society, while minimizing the bad stuff.
Exactly. And it reminds us that technology in itself isn't good or bad. It's a tool. And like any tool, it all comes down to how we use it. The future of drones is in our hands, not just the tech itself.
That's a good reminder that we all have a role to play. And speaking of shaping the future, one thing that really fascinates me is this whole drone and AI crossover.
Oh yeah. AI is a total game changer when it comes to drones. Opens up a whole new world of possibilities. Imagine drones that can fly themselves, make their own decisions in real time, based on the data they collect.
That sounds amazing, but also kind of freaky. What would that mean to have drones with that level of, like,
What?
autonomy,
Mhm.
especially if they're used by the military?
Well, that's a really big debate right now. Some people say AI-powered drones could make war more precise, less collateral damage, keep soldiers safe. But others are worried about things getting out of control, with machines making life or death calls without any human input.
Man, that's a lot to unpack. We could do a whole other deep dive on that alone. But I think we can agree the world of drones is changing really fast.
It is. And what happened at Picatinny, as strange as it is only the beginning.
So where do we go from here? What does the future hold for this tech? That has so much potential, but also so much risk. Well, we've certainly covered a lot in this deep dive, from those weird drone sightings at Picatinny Arsenal to the bigger picture of security, and even, how this could change warfare in this whole new drone age. It's wild to think about all the possibilities, good and bad.
It really shows how technology is like reshaping everything, and we're just starting to figure it out. And like any big change, there are going to be challenges, risks, ethical stuff to deal with.
Something that really hit me during this conversation is that this isn't just about drones. It's about us, about people.
Yeah, I agree. It's about how creative we are, how curious, always pushing the limits. But it's also about our tendency to be reckless, our potential for doing bad things, and how we need to find ways to stop that.
So as we wrap this up, what are some of the main things you hope our listeners will take away from this?
Well, I think the biggest thing is this. Drones are here to stay, and they're going to have a huge impact on our lives in the future. We can't ignore it or pretend it's not happening.
It's like we have to do something. We need to be aware, engaged, and take action to shape how this technology develops and how we use it.
Exactly. We need to have these conversations about the ethics, the laws, the security measures to make sure drones are used for good and for the benefit of everybody.
And that starts with education.
Right.
I mean, it doesn't matter if you're just thinking about buying your first drone, or you're a politician making the rules, or just a concerned citizen. We all need to understand this technology and how it could change our world.
I think another important thing to remember is that there's no easy answer, no magic solution. This isn't just a tech problem, it's a human problem. We need to create a culture of responsible drone use, teach people the rules and the risks, and invest in both technology A&D in like social solutions to deal with the potential dangers.
Probably the most important thing is we need to have these conversations now, before it's too late,
Yeah.
before the technology gets so advanced that we can't control it anymore.
Exactly. The choices we make today, they're going to determine what the drone world looks like tomorrow. It's up to us to make sure that it's a future where drones make our lives better, not worse.
So to everyone listening out there, here's something to think about. What role do you see drones playing in your life, your community, the world? And what can you do, even if it's something small, to make sure that future is a good one?
That's the question we all need to ask ourselves, because the answers will decide what happens with this incredible, rapidly changing technology.
And that's a wrap for our deep dive. We've explored the mysteries, the challenges, and the potential of the drone age. And I hope it's given you some things to think about.
It's been great talking about this with you. Such a complex and interesting topic.
Until next time, keep your eyes on the sky, stay curious, and let's keep exploring the world together, one deep dive at a time.